Hey guys, this week's podcast is brought to you in part by Oil Can Hancock's Man Spray. That's right. Ditch those expensive colognes and overpowering teenage body sprays and get yourself some Oil Can Hancocks. These awesome scents are proudly built in America, crafted for those who aren't afraid to get dirty, and available at a great price. Oil Can Hancocks has you covered. Guaranteed. They sent me 3 cans. I'm smelling amazing, and you can too. Use the code Cabana30. Get 30% off your order plus free shipping at BUYOCH.com. That's BUYOCH.com. Use that code Cabana30. Start smelling great, but for now, start enjoying this show.
This is the Art of Wrestling with professional wrestler Colt Cabana.
It's Colt Cabana.
All right, how you guys doing? Come on in, sit down, relax. You're about to listen to the Art of Wrestling, a professional wrestling podcast. It's a life podcast. It's personal journal. It's an entryway into the minds, the souls, the hearts, and the lives of the people involved in the world of professional wrestling. I am your host. My name is Colt Cabana. I'm a podcaster. I'm a mover. I'm a shaker. I'm a mover and a shaker. Most importantly, though, I am a professional wrestler, and I am sitting here live in my studio apartment in Chicago, Illinois. Before we go any further, this is a fan-supported and listener-supported podcast supported by people just like you. We give it to free of charge every single Thursday. ColtCabana.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts from. A couple great ways that you can support, rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. Tell a friend, tweet it out, Facebook it out. Best way that you can support, though, ColtMerch.com. T-shirts, buttons, pictures, posters, DVDs, digital downloads, premium podcasts, a book, Wrestling Dreams, done by myself and Erica Weiss. It's all available, ColtMerch.com, DigitalColt.com, and that's right, this would be Black Friday season. That's what they would call it. I am giving free holiday cards drawn by the great Sarah Shockey if you order something at Colt Merch. Those Wrestling Dreams books, I'm shipping them out. I also give a video to a child if you would like one. Just put it on the instructions. I got a couple new shirts. I also have a bunch of leftover autographed Wrestling Road Diaries 3 Fun Equals Money signed by myself, Grado, and Kikutaro. A whole bunch of fun gifts. Buy them for somebody for the holidays. That's what you do. And on top of that, you get to support little old me. And little old me is big old me because big old me has left the studio apartment. Oh, man. It was kind of sad for me last week. Last week was the last one I did from my apartment that I've been in since 2006. It's a long time to be in a place, and I was just too lazy to move is essentially what it came down to. Somebody made an offer on the whole building, so I was kind of forced to leave, and now I'm in some new digs. It's not a studio apartment. I feel I still have to say studio apartment. I'm sorry if I'm going to say studio apartment. Some of you will get a little upset. But if you watched Wrestling Road Diaries 3, you'll see a huge spoiler in there that the place I've done this podcast since 2010 was a one-bedroom apartment in Chicago. The first time I ever lived alone in Chicago, Ukrainian Village, I was in a garden apartment, a garden studio apartment, and it really summed up everything. And that's why that was my shout out to studio apartment. So there's a big change in my life, and that is this new apartment that I'm living in. There's also going to be some big changes to the Art of Wrestling moving forward in 2018. Please stick with me. In the next couple weeks, I'll probably make one of those announcements. But today, it's business as usual, and Nick Mondo is on the show. For those of you who don't know, he was the guy that got the weed whacker to his stomach in the CZW Tournament of Death and was a young, hungry, hardcore wrestler. And he put out a movie, and I was super intrigued by it. I watched it. It's on Amazon Prime, so you can just watch it if you have Amazon Prime. A lot of us do. If you don't, just ask a friend their Amazon Prime account, and then you can also watch it. And after watching his movie, I happened to be in Los Angeles, and so it all kind of worked out perfectly. Also, it kind of says the guests I have and my age and where I romance the world of wrestling and independent wrestling. Because Mondo, he was around when I was kind of, trying to make my moves on the independent wrestling scene. So there's a special place for me for his involvement in the world of wrestling. And I understand this is kind of biased to some of the newer guys coming in or some of the people who've been around maybe 10 years or so. But that's just, that's just me and the way I view the wrestling world. And so there's nothing you can do about it. These are the guys I'm familiar with. I know some of their stories. I know his story from this movie he put out, and he'll plug it at the very end. So I hope you enjoy it. It's a really, really interesting talk and dive into the world or the mind of a hardcore wrestler and why he does it, and all the other factors that kind of dive into it. So should be good. As for me, I was with Ring of Honor this past weekend, just commentating. Sick as a fucking dog. Holy shit. And I don't know if it was the week before and everything that just caught up with me, but I went into the show with 100-degree fever. And as a wrestler, sometimes we can wrestle 10 minutes or 15 minutes and then we're done. And I thought, oh, this would be easy. I'm not even wrestling. But it's almost worse because I'm talking for 4 straight hours doing commentary for Ring of Honor. So it was kind of fun watching my body fight this thing throughout the 3 days. And then by the last day as I flew home, I kind of felt well. And I'm happy that I'm here to say that I'm good. I fought it off. My body is strong. My body is not a wonderland, but it's good. It's good enough. And I'll be back next week wrestling in Cleveland, Ohio and Chicago, Illinois properly. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about presenting a Song of the Week for you. And the sponsor for the Song of the Week this week is Stitcher Premium. That's right, the same place you can listen to all of the past archives of this very show. The holidays are coming up, and Stitcher Premium would make a great gift. And they're coming strong with that Black Friday deal. 50% off your first payment for a limited time when you go to StitcherPremium.com/premium and use the code COLT50. So that's $17.50 for an entire year of Stitcher Premium. That's a pretty great deal. Binge over 300 episodes of past Art of Wrestlings. Listen to all 4 seasons of the Stitcher Premium exclusive miniseries, Pro Wrestling Fringe, done by myself. And listen to the hour-long documentary I did about the gathering of the Juggalos. Plus, they have original new shows, bonus episodes of your favorite podcasts, and hundreds of stand-up comedy albums. Some of my favorites include all of the live comedy Bang Bang episodes around the world. The Sklar brothers have a docu-series called Finding the Funny, and Marty DeRosa's Chicago comedy friends kill it in their comedy albums. Comedians like Lisa Traeger and Drew Michael. Again, StitcherPremium.com/premium, and this special offer gets you a year's membership for less than $20. That code is COLT50, COLT50. That's a no-brainer. Song of the Week is a no-brainer also. It's by the Pittsburgh-based ska punk band, the Slobber Knockers. They've been on here before. Their Twitter is @SlobKnockBand. Their Facebook, The Slobber Knockers. And their wrestling-themed album, It's Not Fake, It's Predetermined, is on iTunes, Google Play, and all those fun places. This is called Hurricane. Shout out to you, Mr. Helms, and then we'll be back with Nick Mondo. Nick Mondo, not that sick these days. Are you sick?
I'm healthy Matty Burnsy today. I'm not sick, Nick Mondo. I'm doing good.
Are you going, like, when you're doing movies and all that stuff, it's Matt Burns from here on forward?
Yeah, my credited name is Matthew T. Burns, but just about everybody calls me Matt, so yeah.
You don't even want anything to do with Nick Mondo?
I wouldn't say that. You know, I left wrestling and I pretty much just buried it all for a long time, but for reasons which we'll get into, of course, I dug that stuff up and I decided I'm not going to try and just bury it, and I'm okay with it, finishing my film. Like, I've had to look at that stuff plenty, so.
Well, I'm just saying, when I do, it's so weird when I do auditions, because I'll do audition work and stuff, and I'll be like, Colt Cabana, and then I'll introduce myself as Scott to, like, the people. Like, it's so weird, because they're not in the wrestling world, but I'm also hoping that one person knows about wrestling so they'll, like, book me for a gig.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny, I've had situations where I can think of one really bizarre one where somebody looked up and said, Nick? But they were talking to somebody that was like right behind me, and I look up like, yeah? And I see him like looking from me to the other person, like, what's this guy's problem? Like she knew who I was. Like, I'm Matt, and I'm like, oh, oops, and I put my head down.
A wrestling fan? You know of the Combat Zone?
Yeah.
Oh, you dumb. Oh, man. Well, cool. You're back in LA, and a lot of this is based off of the idea of this movie that you put out, that you made, which I watched, and I don't know. This is no offense to you or anything, because I'm just a sucker for any docu wrestling stuff. So I don't know if it was good or not. I think it was good, but I'm just so biased towards any wrestling thing. It's all, and it was obviously very well done. But I loved it. Like I was enthralled with it. And so I was like, oh, this is great that we'll be able to do this and we'll kind of talk about it, but not give too much away. Were you a fan of wrestling docs and stuff growing up and all that stuff?
I wouldn't say wrestling docs in general. I like to get a closer look into a person's life, somebody who's typically hidden behind a character, I guess you could say. And so that was the process. I guess it was my time to do that with my film, and it's not your traditional typical film at all.
But in your film, you do a lot of stuff where you look back at you as a youngster, and you're filming yourself as a youngster, and it was a lot. And I think it makes me think about myself at that age, because I think we're like around the same age, and so I just remember seeing like the first when Beyond the Mat came on in the movie screen, I was like enthralled with it. I thought it was the greatest movie. I don't know if that's your idea of Beyond or Wrestling with Shadows, right? Those are the two big ones, I think, from our youth.
Yeah.
But when you make something like this, you don't even in your head, you're not even thinking about those two big. Well, because I made the Wrestling Road Diaries, my documentaries, and that's all I think about.
Yeah.
Or, in 20 years, will people think about the Road Diaries like the way they thought about Wrestling with Shadows or Beyond the Mat?
Yeah, no, it's really cool to think of it that way. With my film, I wasn't, and I do admire those films that you mentioned. Like, I really enjoyed them. I mean, I'm working on several film projects right now, and there's a science, it's mathematical when you're laying out the plan for a script, for a blueprint for a film. But with the trade, with my film, it was something that I completely let organically shape itself, and I knew it was going to be bizarre, and truthfully, I didn't even know what it was going to turn into by the time it was done. And so here it is, and I wouldn't compare it to those films because it's such an oddball.
It's only wrestling
bizarre.
Because you were in wrestling.
Yeah.
It really, wrestling wasn't on the back of your mind, which I find weird because a lot of it in the movie, you seem to be coming back to wrestling. Like it's bringing you back.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like interested in how much there is of that kid who is 16 filming himself doing ECW stuff, like still thinks about wrestling in everyday life.
I can look back on a lot of that stuff with fondness, but I mean, obviously I took a darker and a more dangerous path, than you did, and so a lot of it became miserable for me at the end, but I can still look back at that and have some laughs and have some good memories.
What about like the nostalgia of, before you started doing deathmatch stuff, the nostalgia of your love for wrestling? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well,
because I saw it in the clips of you as a kid. I only say I saw it because I feel I did the same thing, and I bet so many of us at home did the same thing.
Oh yeah,
right. And not to the extent you took, but getting with your buddies, having a mattress, being in the basement, doing some kung fu wrestling shit.
Yeah,
like I felt just because of the love for wrestling, it's like, oh, we watch it so much, we got to kind of get it out of our body, right?
Yeah, and people sometimes talk about the backyard wrestling craze starting whenever it was, like late 90s, early 2000s, but oh, come on. I mean, you could go back 200 years, and I'm sure there are kids, beating on each other with pots and pans, and the mom screaming at them. You know what I mean? It's just like
they were like, we went and watched Frank Gotch wrestle. Like, we went and watched Farmer Burns, and we want to go do what Farmer Burns does in the backyard.
You have to do it until, Billy bumps his head on the corner of the coffee table and gets stitches. I mean, it's just like, it always happens in kids' childhood. It's part of growing up,
Deaths, not to bring that down, there's got to be backyard deaths, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard of them, but it's got to be. I know of kids who have gotten seriously hurt. But
seriously, we've never heard of death, though.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't. But
Which has to be a reality. Were you in those backyard wrestling videos?
No, I wasn't in any of those. We didn't actually know about the craze that, ended up, somebody was distributing DVDs on that whole thing.
Yeah.
But no, we would call them ninja battles. That was our term for them.
Yeah.
And we were inspired by ECW. That was coming into popularity in the mid 90s, and fans would bring weapons to the shows, and the wrestlers would come through and grab them and smack each other. And we're like, oh man, we got to go home and do this. We were so excited.
So it wasn't Mick Foley. In my head, it's always Mick Foley for everything.
Yeah.
Remember when Mick Foley? I feel like Chris Farley. Remember when Mick Foley? They aired his backyard tapes on WWF television.
Yeah.
And I felt that everyone was like, "Oh, he's a WWF wrestler, and that's what he did." we should all start doing it because eventually one day our backyard tapes will be on television.
Yeah, we weren't. No, we were filming the stuff just for laughs, and actually at one point, kids were all talking about it in high school, and we would make videotapes and sell them, and people would buy them. But like, we didn't really have an entrepreneurial mindset. Like, we're gonna go somewhere with this. It was just for, small time entertainment.
You didn't have an entrepreneurial mindset, but you were selling them like pizza day. You were selling.
Yeah, well, none of us. We'll put it this way: we weren't thinking, "Oh man, someday we're going to save up and get a ring, and we're going to flyer the town." I know people who did that, and were going to pride themselves on the fact that we got our backyard fed to get the same crowd as the local indie. We never thought that way, but I know people who actually did that.
Did you know about the local indie? Where you're from, Minnesota?
Yeah, I am, but I grew up in Pennsylvania, like middle school, high school. I was in Pennsylvania, and so I went to quite a few of the ECW house shows, and then at the ECW arena, 95, 96, 97. Like right around 97 is when they did their first pay-per-view and really blew up, but it was when they were a little bit more, public access late at night. That's when I was going to ECW, when it was a little more wild and it was a little bit more unpredictable, and that was exciting stuff.
Do you think? Yeah, but it was kind of shittier though, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't think so, because that's when you had Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio Jr. and
but that's
you
not
had
crazy,
the Sandman
though.
coming out and smack. Yeah, but we could appreciate the athleticism of the moves, and then Sabu coming in, just like, what is this dude doing? Like that's what really sparked my imagination. Attention was that guy when he was doing his thing, breaking tables and everything. But that was a really good mix, and veterans, and just Steve Austin came through there before he went to be Stone Cold, and Terry Funk and Bam Bam Gordy.
So you were there for all of that.
Yeah. I wasn't live for like all the arena shows. That's when the big names would come in, but I did go to some of them, and so yeah, I was there to see a lot of that live. I mean, it was wild.
Okay, and then I love the idea that you went to the. Wait, did you go to a wrestling school? Maybe you didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which wrestling school did you go to?
Al Snow's Body Slammers in Cleveland, Ohio.
Really?
Yeah.
You take such a weird path. Okay, because it was like, and it's always like that idea of, I'm going to go. I've heard this so many times of like, we all have this backyard, not we, but there's this backyard clique, and then the one guy goes and gets trained. And I guess different things happen from that. Either he'll come back and he'll train the rest of the guys, or he's like a traitor, or he's like the hero to the group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, none of us, when we were doing the ninja battles, none of us had aspirations of being a pro wrestler. The idea started hitting me, but, I was able to somehow inspire and get all these kids to participate. Like, let's just go beat each other in the backyard and play music and just, improv. That's all it was. But when I started telling them, I think I'm going to go to wrestling school, they're all looking at me like, what? It wasn't like you betrayed us. It was just like, we were just screwing around. What's Matt doing? Why is he going to go to wrestling school?
But when did you had this idea for a long time, or?
No, I'd say it wasn't until I was probably about 18, like my senior year in high school, when I was deciding if I was going to go to art school or what. And I decided I'd take a little detour. It was always my plan to just do it for a few years, wrestling. And so I decided I want to take a break and give it a shot.
You were only going to do the wrestling for a few years.
Yeah, it was always my plan.
That's weird, because you only did it for a few years.
It's funny though, my goal, like I didn't realize how the business worked. ECW is still functioning, and I was like, that's where I'm going. I'm going to do it for 1 or 2 years and then, go to art school. But like, I realized you don't just, pop on the scene and be main eventing in ECW. It's not how it works, number one. But number two, once I started getting a name, like around 2001, that's right when they sunk. And so I was like, oh man. So I did it longer than I was planning.
But also, you don't get into wrestling, get a name, and then peace out. Like, because it's so hard to get a name.
When you're 18, nobody can tell you that. You're stubborn. It's like, that's what I'm going to do. And but then you got to get knocked down a few times and realize this is really tough, But yeah, it was weird, but that was my plan. I was just I want to experience a few things. And
if you look back, and I know you can't look back, but if you look back and say to yourself, like, oh, I didn't, because from the it seemed like the jump off the top with Zandig, the weed whacker, that kind of all was like added into this idea of like, I got to get out, right? I mean, looking back, let's say if you were a normal wrestler.
Yeah.
If you were a normal wrestler and you were on and you had the popularity that you had, looking back, would you have rode that out?
Truthfully, I might have stuck around a little bit longer, even though, like I said, I wanted to have a short career. But it was almost, I hate to say it, but like beneficial to get hurt so badly, because it just sucks so bad walking around hurt all the time that it's like, I'm done with this, man. You know.
Yeah. One of the questions, because I told you I wrote down some questions, and one of the things that really stuck with me, because our minds think, I think, so differently, is that in the film you were just like, I just want to do it and then get out, and you wanted to make a mark. There was no monetary. It didn't seem like I want to try to be set for the rest of my life. Then I can retire, or I'll retire, once I make a good living. That had nothing to do with anything.
No, it didn't.
What about when money started coming in, and you were able to charge a little something, and you were able to kind of, I don't know, pay some bills with it. All of a sudden, you could go out to eat, or you could do it. You can take a vacation because you were making a little bit of money.
It was only I was only starting to scratch the surface. I mean, like, you admire the people that can put it all together like yourself. I wasn't thinking that way at all, number one. But number two, I never anticipated here more than a decade later to be talking about it. This was my time was before YouTube, before Facebook, before social media. I imagined that this would just be a weird phase I went through, and it would kind of disappear on dusty old, DVDs and VHS tapes. And then YouTube comes out and it comes back. I'm like, what? It was never my plan,
Yeah. Are you ever, sometimes I'm weirdly self-conscious about almost being noticed, if that makes sense. When I don't know, if I'm like at a party with a friend, or I'm somewhere and like or if I'm doing something, maybe if I'm doing something weird. And I feel I always have to keep in the back of my mind that, like, I have to make sure that nobody, I'm a little upset that kind of someone knows who I am, that the possibility of like calling me out.
It can bring a weird baggage with it. And from my perspective, sometimes people are like, why don't you tell people about your background? Why don't you talk about it? And it's like, number one, like, the first thing that usually comes out is, you were a wrestler? You must have been bigger. I'm a small guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's the same size.
That stigma is still there, isn't it?
Yeah, but then it's like, well, they wonder, like, was this guy any good, or like, how did you? And they ask questions, and finally, like, I'll show them some stuff, and then like their eyes get wide, and they look at me, and I'm like, they're like, is this somebody I need to worry about? Is he like, is he a psychopath? And so it's not good attention, and I don't really like it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I don't want to do a spoiler to the movie also, but a lot of this is based off the movie.
Spoilers are okay.
Because it's so fresh in my mind. You said there was this amazing, I don't remember the quote, but I remember the gist of it, of you asked Wife Beater why you do this.
Yeah.
And then it started making you think why you did it.
Yeah.
And you said guilt, right?
Yeah.
And a little bit of me, just because who I am, I wanted to be like, no, it's because wrestling rules. And you watched a lot of ECW.
There's that's part of it for all of the guys that do the high risk stuff. It's a rush, man. When you set up a tremendous stunt and you survive it, and it doesn't hurt as bad as you thought it did, and you sell it and make it look like, that's a real rush. But like, I was starting to realize, like, when it's to that extent that you're ripping your flesh apart, there's something wrong. It's not healthy to purposely destroy yourself like that. And it's beyond just like, I'm desperate for attention, or I want the rush. And I started asking those why questions. It was just in my head, like, why is this going on? There has to be a reason that you're willing to do this.
Did you ever go see a psychologist or a shrink?
I've talked to people. I was friends with a professional counselor, and I've worked through some of this stuff. But like, I've answered those why questions, and my film does delve into this, which the guilt I was talking about that I was struggling with. It was true. I portrayed it in more of a, not a direct form, but like it's there in the film. I did sit through a church sermon on the crucifixion of Christ when I was about 16 that was extremely graphic and extremely guilt-laden. And it was a woman pastor, and she ended the sermon by saying, there's not one person in here who would willingly take that upon themselves, but Christ did that for you. But it was like this guilt-heavy thing. But the fact that she said that triggered me. I can't even tell you what it did to me. I was so obsessed. I was like, you telling me like I wouldn't go through that. And I was obsessed with this. And I, in a sense, was looking for a way to atone for my own sins. And you can mix in the adventure and the fun. Like, some of that stuff is really fun in the ring. But I finally got down to the root of it. Is just like I was obsessed with the notion of taking damage to myself and shedding blood. I couldn't get that out of my mind.
For your religion? I guess it confuses. I understand what you're saying, but also I don't know Christianity that well.
Yeah.
So the guilt is that you haven't done enough for mankind, or
this was a woman, is an unhealthy woman that this.
I was going to say that has to be unhealthy to put. She's putting all that guilt on the whole church, right?
Well, I'll just pause it real quick and say, it was at that point I told my parents, like, I'm not coming to church with you anymore. But they told me that shortly after that woman actually said, you know,
joined a death league. She went to IWA Japan, and
she ended up being Lita in the WWE. No, I'm kidding. But no, she said to the congregation something like, you know what, I'm very aware that I'm dealing with some unhealthy thinking, and I need to step down from my position. So I admire her for that. But it was basically me as a kid with ADHD, you know, but something got through to me. Here's somebody saying your sins were paid for by somebody else and you should feel guilty about it. And it rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, I'm not accepting that. Like, I can't stand the notion of somebody else taking my lashings, my whippings, you know. And so that was part of what was motivating me.
Then do you hold a lot of guilt just for other reasons? Is that something?
Not today. No, I don't. It was something I got over. And again, a lot of this is more beneath the surface in my film, but at the end I'm going through an internal monologue, and the realization I came to is like, that was never the message of Christianity. It's not in there. It's a free gift, you know. You don't need to pay for your own sins. You don't need to, you know, it was paid for by Christ. And so I'm just saying it was twisted, and it really messed me up as a kid, but that was wrong, and it was that woman's fault, you know. And so,
you ever try to have a chat with her?
No, I'm not interested.
Not interested.
No.
Okay. You go to Al Snow's Body Slammers in Cleveland?
Yeah, Cleveland.
Wasn't it Lima, Ohio?
No, it was in Cleveland. I remember hearing something about Lima when I was there, like them running shows or something. I think that's
well. He had a gym. He had a. That's where like Truth Martini.
Yeah. And
a lot of these guys from when I started.
Yeah.
That were around me because they probably weren't. I don't know if they were around you. Well, we started the same. You 99?
Yeah. It was the beginning of 99 is when I started training.
I guess Danny Daniels in 98, 97.
Yeah,
they all were in Lima.
He was the class before me. Blue Meanie he trained there. I think Adam Pierce might have.
No, definitely didn't.
He was in the area. Maybe he didn't train there. I just remember
did some shows up there probably.
Something about him hanging around. But yeah, Al started this school, and then
he probably hated you.
I didn't. Well, two of his students took it over because he was on his whole hardcore run with WWE, and so I only saw him once.
Crusher Klein, was that the guy who took over?
No, one guy. Oh, gosh, Charlie Kid Copperpot was his wrestling name.
I don't know that name.
The other guy was Dan. I can't remember.
Elvis Elliott is his name.
I'll tell you, he was one of the kindest guys. Like, I'll say, in my arrogance, like my first match ever was like 5,000 people in the crowd, a battle royal, and he was in it as my instructor, and he put me in the corner and started chopping me, and I grabbed him and threw him in the corner and started chopping him, and I realized afterwards, like, what an arrogant thing to do. Like, I deserved to get beat up, but he took it and he was fine with it, you know. And it made me think of just like what a kind guy. Like, I deserved to just get.
When did you take that? When did you realize that? Oh, you didn't realize that right after you did that, did you?
No, I think somebody told me early on that, like, listen, your first couple years in the business, you might get beat up a couple times. You're probably not going to get paid for your first 50 matches. And so I was always just like, nobody's going to take advantage of me in the ring. And I just had this mindset, like, if anybody does anything to me, I'm going to take over and whatever.
Yeah, you have that. It's do you a little against authority a little bit. Maybe that's it. I feel I have that a little bit.
I definitely had that when I was younger. If somebody's abusing their power, I don't like to see that at all.
Okay.
You know, and I'll stand my ground, but not if it's going to land me a $250 ticket for mouthing off to a cop. You understand when you need to follow the rules.
So you go to wrestling school with the idea that you want to be this kind of hardcore wrestler, right?
Yeah,
Which
always.
and the especially in that area, and especially they're all brought in on like you have to know how to work a arm, you have to know how to work a head.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of thing in wrestling school, and I don't know if it's changed because it's been so long since I've kind of been to a wrestling school. But the idea of like it's so looked down upon that style, and it is like basics, and like if you want to be a good wrestler, you have to know how to do a headlock spot, right? And I guess at that time, the late 90s, that was really implemented in these wrestling schools. Yeah. But you were bucking the system. Were you hiding the idea that you wanted to do this going into that wrestling school? Did you know better?
Such a determination and such a focus in me that I can remember everybody would just kind of look at me and take a couple steps back. Even my trainers, everybody, I was so determined with what I wanted to do, and I was going to prove it, that nobody really stopped me. And so, I did go through all the training, all the basics, everything I had to learn, and I did it well, but I was always determined to go through with that style. And somehow, I don't know, wherever I would go, people were just like, whoa, like do your thing and let me go.
The trainers and the vets, they wouldn't be like, you shouldn't be doing this stuff.
Well, no, I wasn't trying to train violent stuff, but I did always want to skip steps. I remember I wanted to learn 450s, and they're like, come on, you can't do that. And so I was living in the gym, and so what do? I pull the crash pad out, and I remember one night just like crashing about a dozen of them. It really hurt until I finally learned, if I grab my ankles like this, I'll hit it. And then I taught myself to do the things that I wanted to do.
When you were doing, so you like made this big name at CZW. Were those like your first matches after being a trained pro?
No, I wrestled for.
Did you do the shitty shows around?
Oh yeah. I think I wrestled for over a year before CZW brought me in.
Okay.
And I was living in Pennsylvania, and so since I trained in Cleveland, I made connections there. And so, I was driving 7 hours out and doing, just real crap indie shows in Cleveland, and then finally. PCW under Blaine DeSantis picked me up in Pennsylvania, and from there a bunch of other indies. And then I met the backseats, Trent Acid and Johnny Kashmir. And I was doing just a straight wrestling match, but I was calling a spot where, you bring somebody in the hard way. I was going to get brought out the hard way and take a bump on. It was like a roller skating rink, and Kashmir overheard this, and he was like, what? And then he started, paying attention, and then he said, hey man, give me some of your stuff. I'll show it to Zandig, and then he got me into CZW. So.
And you wanted to take that hard way bump to the outside because of this guilt, or because you thought it would look awesome?
A combination of both. I was just motivated to be a high risk wrestler. Yeah. Always. Like it was a combination of both. I was obsessed with taking damage. I didn't want to destroy my body to the point that I hurt the rest of my life, but I wanted to take a beating. I wanted to bleed.
But there is that mathematics or science to it, right? Like, what's the highest risk thing I can do that won't hurt, or something like that, or what's the coolest thing that's so innovative that people will be like, holy shit, and then you find that line of like high risk to not hurting. Yeah, as it's performed.
Exactly, and as you know, sometimes the stupidest thing will hurt you that you wouldn't imagine.
Oh, what do you got? Some of those, or you remember any of those?
I always tell people like the stupidest one. Like one time, I was just picking up a table. I was going to slide in the ring, and it slipped out of my fingers and dropped sideways and landed on my big toe and broke it. And I was just like, oh, but nobody saw it, so you just have to continue and pretend. But a power bomb can really hurt you. It's stupid stuff like that. Somebody doesn't quite throw you flat, your upper shoulders hit first, your head bounces, and you almost get knocked out. I've had that happen, and the stupidest stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we first met in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, it would have been Steel Domain, right?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
And so what was happening? You were doing the CZW stuff, but you had moved back to Minnesota?
Yep. Yeah. I was about 2000. I moved back to Minnesota, where I was born.
And so here's something I'll say to you, which I think is, I don't know if it's fun for you to hear or not, but I remember, so there's a point where we were in BW3s, and you were showing Punk and I like footage of the CZW stuff that you were doing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was you in the back seats with kind of like some real innovative, weird stuff. And I remember how like, you were like, this is the future, and you were super excited about it. And you had the camcorder, which is kind of fitting that you kind of always carried your camcorder around.
Yeah.
And I just remember I eventually then did the MAW Hardcore Cup.
Oh wow, yeah.
I did a tables and ladders match. Tables and chairs match with Dino Bambino.
Right on.
Because I don't know, a little bit of me was like, I don't know what it was, and I'm trying to think back now, like saying to you, almost there was a little influence of like, this is getting attention. You can see how cool it is. People are liking it, and maybe I should kind of not change my game a little bit, but maybe this is something you have to do to hang with what's happening, and that's going to go to you influencing people, and the style influencing, and then influencing all these young kids. I mean, we were the same age, and I was influenced by it.
It's, something that I've struggled with today is the fact that I was never laying a blueprint for a long-lasting career. I mean, here you are, you're still going, and
luckily I just did the one Hardcore Cup.
I was burning the candle at both ends, and like, you cannot do that lifestyle and last. And I mean, maybe you can, but you're not going to live a very comfortable life, and I knew that, and so it's not fair, really, like to come out there and grab attention like that, with a whole business full of people, and it's damaging. Like, it's
Well, when you see these kids saying like, I looked up to you, this is why I do this stuff, but do you still champion that style?
I will always be a fan of the ECW hardcore style, mixing in just a little bit of the gimmicks, the tables, the chairs, ladders. Like, I really think they did a great job with that, but CZW came along, and Zandig had a vision for the only way to top this is to we get hurt worse. And, like, that's not it. That's not how you top ECW.
So do you worry when you come back to Cage of Death and you see what these guys are doing?
I worry about these guys. Yeah. And a lot of them, they're really feeling the wear and tear. I mean, I see their personal lives, and they got some issues, and it's
Did you see that Vice documentary that they?
Yeah, that was really well done.
I thought it was greatly done.
Yeah, it was very well done.
And it's so weird how I always feel that like good footage and good filmmaking can make, not to say it wasn't good, but all of a sudden I was like, wait, am I a huge CZW Deathmatch fan? What's going on? Because I don't know, and you can appreciate that as a filmmaker and someone in working in this, and I guess in both worlds, that there's just something about great filmmaking and great shooting that will make something look awesome that maybe you didn't know was awesome.
They did a fantastic job of making it accessible. And I don't mean introducing like, hey, this is something you should do, but bringing you into an environment which is quite uncomfortable. I mean, if you go there and you sit in the crowd, I mean, you can see the people there. I mean, they're just screaming their heads off and pissed drunk, a lot of them. And it's not going to be a real comfortable environment for a newcomer. It's going to be like, where am I? And oh, whoa, glass just came flying in the crowd. And I mean, but they made it accessible so you could at least look at it and understand what's happening. And
but that's our scene, is the wrestling scene, is where am I? What is this? But we know this world so well. Mm-hmm. And I always think that's kind of, indie wrestling's kind of hitting a boom where it's underground music and, you see them first. And that's kind of what it's always been. Yeah. But now people are realizing it. But also, whenever I invite someone to a live wrestling show, I think they always think of arena wrestling. That's what I call it. But if you just come to these these cool small indies, I would say, the shitty ones, you bring your kids to those, right? But like the cool bar ones that are for 18 and above, that are for the right audience, like no one's ever like, this was awful. I feel, and I think that's because it's this like underground experience. It's still underground, which I find weird. I don't know if you find this weird, but I was never the kid that knew the bands that nobody knew. I was never like a hipster in terms of anything art or culture.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I guess I kind of am for wrestling.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were like that. You must have been, because you knew the weird Japanese animation and stuff, right?
Yeah, I liked some fringe things, when I was a teenager. And some people, fans, it's just to what degree do you want to turn up the volume or the intensity of what you're watching? I mean, you can go to a WWE show and it's thrilling, it's exciting, but you go to a CZW show, and like I say, you better protect yourself. You better, there's gonna be, you know, a wrestler flying through and blood, you know, just splashing on the fan. I mean,
You ever worry about that?
oh man, big time at the end. I was so focused on getting into the wrestling and, you know, building a name and doing the violent stuff, and all of a sudden, you know, there's a couple people I'm wrestling with, and I know their personal lifestyles, and I'm just like, and I'm going to be swapping blood with this person, and it started really making me nervous at the end.
That's something I noticed, and I'm also saying about your blood flying onto audience members, like you're Gallagher and a watermelon.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, literally. I mean, like we've had situations where here's a little trick: like if a fan is really heckling you and you don't like the person, and you're doing a violent match and your back's all bloody, you basically just aim for the guy, shoot your opponent, and say reverse Irish whip, and just like jump and go flying into the guy. Like I did that one time, you know. But yeah, that's concerning. But today, the blood tests are much more serious. Like they're on top of that. And
I was gonna say, did you, after it was all kind of said and done, was there a point where you were like getting a blood test, and then as the results were coming, you were kind of like, I was really fighting for blood tests at the end, and insisted before I did the second Tournament of Death. I told Zandig I want my opponents all tested. Okay. And the day comes, I'm just like, so what about the blood test? He's like, well, I told him, but they just didn't do it, and I was pissed about that. So I mean, I did my final performance, and yeah, I got a really thorough blood test, and I think it took like 6 months for the results to come back, and I was a little nervous about that, honestly, but it's okay, fortunately. oh, you are good. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, there are a couple people who got Hep C, Abdullah Kobayashi, you know, and he had to take off a year or two, and there's a whole process, the dialysis, you can beat that, but
Big Japan, right?
yeah, and
Kobe,
you know,
I mean, I'm saying that he's in Big Japan.
yeah,
okay.
But you know, American guys were going over and wrestling him, and so I mean, it can happen.
You moved to Japan. Do you speak fluent Japanese?
I wouldn't say perfectly fluent, but I do fine. I was on a film set with a Japanese woman yesterday. We were speaking Japanese, and I was helping her with emails, you know, with her English and all that stuff. So yeah.
Did you fall for Japan while wrestling there? Did you wrestled for Big Japan, right?
Yeah, and that was could not believe the place when I went there. I had left the country before, but I went to Japan, age 20, did a tour, and it's just like, what planet am I on? And I couldn't believe the culture, man. There's such self-control and such manners and it's such a safe place. It's such a peaceful place. I mean, like, I know there's below the surface a lot of dysfunction going on, but like externally, I just admire the order and the discipline and something I just love about that culture.
Well, how did that tour come about? Just
through CZW, they had a relationship with Big Japan Pro Wrestling.
Did you know that this was coming and you were hoping you'd be picked, or was it something that was just kind of sprouted on you?
I was very interested, but I didn't imagine I'd go. I was only wrestling, I don't know, less than 2 years at the time, something like that, and I was still just learning, but I got the chance, and so I couldn't believe it. I can remember
what I'm saying was, did you know that they were going to pick guys, and did you know they were going to pick guys, and then like it was you, or did they just say, hey, do you want to go to Japan, and it kind of came out of left field? That situation where they're bringing guys
I'd say
over.
it kind of came out of left field. They had already done a couple tours, but
So there's no anticipation of you being like, oh my God, I hope it's me.
No, I just didn't imagine it would be. As a matter of fact, I think I'd only done like 3 shows for CZW, and so I'm still just like trying to survive in this hostile environment and win the fans over and everything, you know. And they were just bringing me in, jobbing me, having me get killed, and you know, I wasn't doing violent stuff at first, but I was at my own choice taking some pretty serious bumps, but. I was just like trying to get over in the company, but then all of a sudden it's like, hey, do you want to go on this tour? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. Yeah.
So in the film, it hit me, and I didn't realize, and this is, I guess, credit to the film, that like, oh, like it made me go, oh, and I guess that's probably your job to do that, is you said like there's a lot of lonely nights, you just walking around, because sometimes I think of like, oh, maybe I should move somewhere, and then it hit me the realization of like, well, that sounds good moving to LA. But the reality is I'll probably just sit in my apartment all day and doing nothing, and then I'm just in LA away from everybody.
There's a certain isolation that comes with...
Did you have any friends or know anybody?
Oh, yeah, I had friends, but I can't really explain it, but like... Well, the apartments are so small in Tokyo. It can be awkward hanging out with people, and a lot of people just want to get out of their apartments. And a lot of people are dealing with stress, whether it's, the cost of living is really high, or jobs just kill people too many hours, whatever. And people kind of tend to isolate and fall into depression. I mean, it's so widespread there. It's why you have so many of the weird, host and hostess bars where you pay somebody to just sit and pretend they're interested in you. I mean, it's bizarre culture, but toward the end, like I had a good number of friends, but so many of them, I never got tired of that city of Tokyo. I'd want to go out and see things, but my friends who live there, they're just like stressed out by the city, overwhelmed. They just want to sit at home and do nothing. I liked it when people would come through, and a lot of people did, and I'd meet up with them, friends or wrestlers or whoever, to go around and see the city. But and it's a very lonely place, though. It's strange how lonely Tokyo can be.
You couldn't see yourself living there the rest of your life?
No, because my primary interest is the film and TV business right now, and their industry is really struggling. So for that reason, I still love the city of Tokyo, but specifically because of the film industry. That's why I'm here in Los Angeles.
But you knew there would be an out. When you moved there, you knew that wasn't the rest of your life.
Yeah, same as wrestling. I ended up staying in Japan for about 5 years, and same with the wrestling business, about 5 years.
Yeah.
When my plan was only 1 or 2.
You're a real 5-year guy, they say.
I suppose. But the end, honestly, I wanted to leave, but I couldn't because I wasn't making enough money to leave, and I was just kind of stuck there the last year and a half. Like, I got to get out of here. I got to get to LA, and finally, I'm just like, screw it. I'm just going to run up credit cards to move to LA.
No shit. Were you working over there?
Yeah, I was working.
Doing what?
Freelance editing, writing, directing, and then acting as well. Just all freelance stuff. The first year was all documentary film work for a relief organization related to the disaster, and then from there, just freelance film in general.
I was talking with Kenny Omega. I don't know if you have a relationship with him.
I haven't met him, but of course I know who he is.
Yeah, and he talks perfect Japanese, and I was like, do you think you could, become like this star? And he was like, no, like the Japanese would make fun of the way I talk because it's not that perfect. And I was like, oh God. So he's like, I couldn't transition to like mainstream Japanese film, if that makes sense, like our equivalent of Hollywood. He couldn't be like a Hollywood star as an American guy or a North American guy.
Very few opportunities for foreigners to be a megastar over there. I'm friends with the guy who plays Ladybeard.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and he's an anomaly, but look at what he's doing. I met him right when he came to Japan, and he had.
And for context, he's this Australian. Is that right?
He's Australian and
trans, kind of, or just not trans, but he's a dude with a beard.
You talk to him. He's not gay. He's not trans or anything like that. He's just a dude. Real polite. He's got a big red beard and pigtails. But yeah, he dresses up in kind of like a schoolgirl uniform, and his character is Ladybeard. And he's released albums, and he trained in stunts and choreography in Hong Kong for years, and martial arts, and he dabbled in pro wrestling. He does some wrestling events and all that stuff. So, but I met him right when he came to Japan. He'd kind of given up on Hong Kong and was kind of down and everything, and he showed me his stuff, and I said, dude, like, you're going to blow up here. And he's like, oh, thank you, man. And I was like, no, listen to me. I mean, like, fast. Like, it's going to happen. You hear me? He's like, you think so? I'm like, I do. And sure enough, like, he connected it with a couple of talent agencies, and they're like, whoa. And they put him on TV, and he just blew up.
No shit.
Yeah, so it's all sorts of albums and everything. And then, ironically, Hong Kong decided they wanted it. Like, they can't get enough of them, and they're flying them back all the time.
It's a good way to live.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm saying in Japan, he's so odd, and he's so loud, and he's so funny. He's huge. But to just make it straight on you, strictly, I can speak Japanese. It's tough. Like, it's very tough.
Okay, a couple other things I wanted to get at. Mm-hmm. The weed whacker.
Yeah.
Which I guess at that point was probably. At that point, I guess for context, if you don't know, you took a weed whacker to the stomach. Still got those scars, obviously, I'd assume.
Yeah.
You're not happy about it. That was the highest thing probably at that point in at least American wrestling that had gotten to, like, and by highest I mean like topping.
Yeah.
And you're taken out by this right now.
I've what?
You've been taken out by this. You
Yeah.
seem checked out by that, huh?
Oh no.
Just bringing it up.
No, it's quite all right. Yeah, it's funny because I wasn't the first person to do that. As a matter of fact, 2 years prior, I was touring Japan, and it was a house show, and I saw Yamakawa. He was a big star for Big Japan.
House show.
Yes. And I kid you not, he took one as bad as the one I took, and it disturbed me because this is a stupid reason for it disturbing me. Usually when I would see dangerous things, it's just like, yeah, I could do that. Like, yeah, I saw that, and I was just like so distressed. Like, I don't know if I could do that. And I obsessed over it. And then like a couple years later, I just picked the right stage to do it on. I knew there were going to be a lot of wrestling magazines. This was like the first big deathmatch tournament in the States. And I don't know, a lot of press was there, and it was, the third round, the finals. It was how I was going to lose. And it's my idea. And so, I wasn't the first to do it. I've seen Wife Beater take one before I did, really bad too, but it's just the right timing.
You knew to do it at the right time.
Yeah, I guess. if there's a right time to take a win back, I suppose that was the right time.
And then the other one was Rory Gulak, who was Little Mondo. And I don't know. So I mean, I guess to kind of close it all up, he's changed his gimmick, and he's no longer Little Mondo.
Yes.
I don't know. I guess your thoughts on just kind of the process of him, obviously, like knowing that the way that you showed me that video when we were both, let's say 20 or 21, but he was 13 and probably super impressionable. And it's not on you, I guess, to be a parent at 21. And I don't mean a parent, but like knowing that you're a role model, right?
Yeah. He's 10 years younger than we are, so he would have been 10, 11, going to wrestling shows, watching this violent stuff. For people who don't know, I was Nick Mondo, and he would show up as Little Mondo, dressed like me, and just a heel. It was hysterical. Like the whole crowd would be like, F Little Mondo, clap, 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 like chanting. He'd stand up on his chair, like, F you, I'll fight anyone you got. Like, just a heel, a natural heel. But fast forward like 5 years after I quit wrestling, this kid was... I guess he would have been 18 and debuted as Little Mondo. He had put on some weight, and I'm just like, I had no idea he was going to do this.
You did it?
I had no...
I could have told you that.
Well, he was hanging around the wrestling school training, and so I figured he's going to get in the ring, but I never even crossed my mind that he would actually carry on my gimmick.
But he had a gimmick.
Yeah, but I would...
At 11 years old, he had a gimmick, a built-in gimmick.
Well, here's what logic would tell me. If he steps in the ring and does that, the fans are probably going to give him a really hard time unless he matches or surpasses, the violence that I was doing, which is a heavy weight to bear, But he did it, and I couldn't believe it. Gets more and more into the violent stuff, starts destroying his body, and I had a real hard time watching that. And my film, The Trade, kind of focuses on that storyline, and eventually I came back. It was kind of like a bargain. I just said, like, listen, if I make an appearance in one of your matches, like, will you tone back some of this stuff? And okay. And so I came back and I appeared in one of his matches, and that was when he decided he was going to retire from the death matches. He is doing just a pure straight wrestling style right now, but he retired the Little Mondo gimmick at that point.
So that's got to feel good. For you?
Relief. It was relief. It's like I can see other people making their decisions to do whatever they want to do in the ring, and I get it. You got to get it out of your system. But watching him get hurt and reenacting what I was doing was difficult to watch. So yeah.
And of course, that movie is The Trade. I watched it on Amazon Prime. Where else can we get that?
That's it right now. It's on Amazon Prime, but soon it'll be on Google Play and early next year on iTunes. And I'm working on a collector's edition DVD with a bunch of bonus stuff right now. But Amazon Prime is the best way to find it. And I believe several titles come up when you search for it. If you just look The Trade Nick Mondo, you'll find it.
I think I typed in Nick Mondo.
Okay, yeah, or just Nick Mondo, it'll come up. But apparently there are like a bunch of titles with something, The Trade in the title, but Nick Mondo will bring it up. But
and are you on social media as Nick Mondo, or are you doing Matt Burns?
It's a mix both. Facebook, facebook.com/MTB Mondo. MTB is Matthew Timothy Burns, and Instagram MTB Mondo as well. But Yeah, thank you, man.
And that's how people get a hold of you.
Yeah,
You're doing freelance. You're trying to make, and the story is you're trying to make it in LA.
Yes. Yep. Goal right now is just to get another, full-length film or TV pilot going, and so
That you make.
yes.
But you also you're acting and stuff.
Yeah, it's not an ambition to do much with acting, but it's an easy way to pay the bills right now, and so I'm doing a bunch of just tiny things in TV and film, background work mostly, but yeah, I'm in LA. And
You're one of these millions of people who are in LA trying to.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It's got to be so similar to wrestling.
oh yeah,
Paying those dues all over again.
It really is, but same as wrestling. If you figure out what you can do uniquely, like you have, man, you can make a living. You can do it. It's just like I think there are too many people trying to imitate what others are doing. But if you figure out what your brand is and what your identity is, like you can make it. There's room for anybody, I think. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Great to talk to you, bud.
You too.
Thank you.
It's Colt Cabana.
All right, Nick Mondo on the show. Super interesting. I thought so. Especially when watching his movie and then going able to kind of ask all the questions I wanted to ask right after the movie. I wish him all the luck. Hopefully I'll be seeing him on the small screen. I did have 6 lines in Chicago PD, All right, before we get out of here, let's get to some plugs and...
Upcoming events.
All right, the best way that you can support ColtMerch.com, digitalcolt.com, especially Wrestling Dreams. Please buy it for a little one for Hanukkah or Christmas or whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate. Twitter and Instagram at Colt Cabana, Facebook /AOW podcast, also /Colt Cabana. My storytelling podcast, Pro Wrestling Fringe, plus all the past archives of the show. They're ad-free and they're on StitcherPremium.com/premium. Use that code COLT50. Get the whole year for less than $20. ColtWrestling@gmail.com is my very public email. Maybe a promoter you want to put me on your upcoming show or convention. I got a YouTube channel. I got a website, ColtCabana.com. I also got a P.O. box, but I'm going to have to switch that number pretty quickly. Upcoming Friday, November 24th, Cleveland, Ohio, AIWrestling.com. Saturday, November 25th, Chicago, Illinois, AAWrestling.com. Friday and Saturday, December 8th and 9th, Brooklyn, New York, Rahway, New Jersey, WrestleProOnline.com. December 15th and 16th, New York City and Philadelphia. I'll be doing commentating for ROHWrestling.com. December 24th, December 30th, January 3rd, Tokyo, Japan, DDTPro.com. Go to the Dome Show and then see me wrestling at Kurikan Hall. Saturday, January 6th, the next day I get back, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Facebook /First Wrestling. Friday, January 12th, La Crosse, Wisconsin, Facebook /River City CW. Saturday, January 13th, Austin, Texas, WrestleCircus.com. And Sunday, January 14th, Chicago, Illinois, Facebook /Zello Pro. That is the show for this week. All right. It's a good one. Thank you to you guys at home for listening. Thanks to Nick Mondo for coming on the show. Thanks to Cable Guy Jeff and Stu Stone, Kid Russell, Matt Jenkins on music, Dane Miller and Creaky with some tech help. Let's thank some sponsors. HighSpots.com, a VOD service that gives you some PWG, some Kevin Steen shoots, some $5 wrestling, plus AMA knee pads, gear, mask, wrestling rings, OneHourTees.com. They help run ProWrestlingCrate.com and ProWrestlingTees.com. They have a physical place that you can come to in Chicago. TweakedAudio.com/Colt. The earbuds that I use get over 30% off and free shipping just because you listen to this show. All right, that's it. I finished it. I did it in a new place. I feel pretty good about it. There's no train running by. Will you guys miss that train? I won't. I mean, I will a little bit, but come on. I won't miss that. Moving's weird, isn't it? You got to get used to a whole new routine. I don't feel like it's home yet. I don't have a couch yet. You got to get a couch. I've been Craigslist couch shopping. Everyone's telling me not to do that. Saying, Colt, you got to just buy a new fucking couch. And I'm like, I want to get a Craigslist one. It seems like you can always get a cheap couch somewhere, but that's the big debate inside my head right now. Couch Cabana. Oh, nothing like laying on a couch for a while. And I don't have one. I got an empty room with no couch. I got to put a couch in there. These are my problems, people. Decent problems to have. All right, till next week. This has been The Art of Wrestling for Colt Cabana. I'm Colt Cabana. Thanks.